In this video, we're going to look at how to manually tag a PDF. Tags determine the content that will be read back to users of assistive technologies such as screen readers. To demonstrate how to manually tag a document, let's open the following sample brochure. Once the brochure is open, clicking on the tag icon in the left-hand panel will show us that this particular PDF is currently not accessible to screen readers, given that the content has not yet been tagged. To begin manually tagging the content of the PDF, we first need to open the touch-up reading order panel by selecting the order icon in the left-hand column, then clicking on the options icon and selecting Show Reading Order Panel from the drop-down menu. Once the touch-up reading order panel is open, move it to one side to allow for the selection of content within the document. The first block of text that we'll tag is the heading text in the PDF, entitled English for Academic Purposes. To tag the heading, simply drag a marquee around the outside of the text by left-clicking and dragging the cursor so that it surrounds the text. Release the left-click button and you'll notice that the heading is now surrounded by a blue box, which means it's been properly selected. In order to apply some heading structure to the document, let's tag this block of text by clicking on the Heading 1 button in the touch-up reading order panel. You'll notice that the heading has now been tagged and displays the reading order that screen readers will use to read the content back to the user. We can now move on to tagging the first image in the document, which is a photo of the building entrance at George Brown College. Once again, drag a marquee area around the image and then release the left-click button, at which point you should see a blue box that surrounds the graphic, meaning that the image has now been selected properly and can be tagged by going to the touch-up reading order panel and selecting Figure. Once the image has been tagged as a figure, we then need to add alternate or alt text by left-clicking on the reading order number at the top left of the image, then right-clicking and selecting Edit Alternate Text. This will enable screen readers to read back a description of the image so that a person who may be visually impaired will get a sense as to what the image or photo is trying to convey. In this case, we'll simply add George Brown College building entrance. We can now go ahead and drag a marquee around the next block of content. Once the content has been selected, we can tag it as text, but first we need to deselect the image in order to tag that separately as a figure. To do this, press the Ctrl key on your keyboard, then drag another marquee around the photo to deselect it. Once that's done, we can then select text from the touch-up reading order panel to tag the text. We can then go back to the photo, select it and tag it as a figure. The reason for doing it this way is that it's sometimes tricky to select text without selecting images, so it's good to know that we can always reselect elements within content. Once the photo has been tagged as a figure, we then need to add alt text by left-clicking on the reading order number at the top left of the image, right-clicking and selecting Edit Alternate Text. In this case, we'll add the actual name of the person in the photo as the alt text. Moving on to the text in the right-hand column, we'll now select the second heading and tag it as Heading 2. Once that's done, we can now go ahead and select the next block of text below the second heading and tag that block as text. The final figure in the document is a QR or Quick Response Code. Drag the cursor around this image to select it, then tag it as a figure in the touch-up reading order panel. Once that's done, we'll then need to add alt text to the image by left-clicking on the reading order number at the top left of the image, right-clicking and selecting Edit Alternate Text. In this case, we'll add QR code as the alt text. We can then select the instructions to the right of the image and tag it as text in the touch-up reading order panel. Once that's done, we can go to the Tags tab in the left-hand panel and view the newly created tags. Clicking or scrolling down the tags in the directory tree will highlight all the elements within the document that we've tagged, which means the content has now been optimized for screen readers.